Win big in 2024 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the Live Draft Assistant, Free Agent Finder, and Lineup Optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, and NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral link or my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got free contests and paid contests coming to a state near you. Check it out. They're giving boosts out all day long. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you another interlude episode of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. We're coming off of UFC 300. It was a massive weekend. Got an off week in the UFC this week. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make picks for all major MMA events, UFC Fight Pass and regional promotions, boxing events. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. And with me today, you've heard him on this show about a year ago. He has since become a father too. He is the host of the college basketball experience, the college football experience, the UFL gambling podcast for the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. We did the Kentucky football preview together too on that network. Give it up for the Colby Dant. Colby, thank you so much for being here today. Great to have you back.
Oh, I love that introduction. And I was, if you're watching this, I'm showing off my child's sock that randomly when I went to go record in my studio, I had a child's sock on my computer. So, life as a new father is great, man. I appreciate the introduction. I hope you're doing well as well. You know, I know yours were you're a couple months older than mine, right?
My son was born November 15th. It was the day after Kentucky lost to Kansas, because I remember while my wife was getting sleep, after she got like the epidural and stuff the night before, I was up like pacing all night, like watching that game. And then I was like, damn, like I got to ignore that for what the day is upcoming ahead of me, because I don't want to consider this a bad omen. It's too early for that.
I mean, mine was January 31st, but it was still in like the heart of college basketball season. And it was hilarious because, at times you're just like, hey, honey, you doing okay? And then she dozes off for a little bit. You're checking your scores. You're saying, oh, what do we got here? Not ideal for that. I've always said that I wanted to have babies in like the off season. It just hasn't happened for football or basketball. Same with wedding. My wedding ended up happening in October, and that's a party foul on me. But I'm glad to be here, man, and I'm glad you're doing good, man. And fatherhood's a trip so far, man. My son was just crying, for the past 20 minutes before we went live. So it's nothing. It's not, it's good. I'm immune to it now.
And you're a person who does like a high volume of podcasts, and it's not just, for the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, you hop around and do like other people's shows and stuff like that. And it is at first, at least until you find your rhythm, a challenge to work in this stuff and following, the UFL and watching as many mid-major college basketball games as you can. Like at first it's like, damn, like I don't know, but then you sort of get into a rhythm, and it's like, you carve out the things that are like, important to you outside of, those key, family things you have to take care of.
Yeah, no, I feel like passion feeds passion, in my opinion. Whatever that is that you are passionate about. For me, I love sports, always love sports. Between that, I do stand up, and then I still I still dive heavy into movies. I did I have a bunch of screenplays that have never been made, just like every other piece of shit writer in LA. But you know what I mean? Those things get all my attention besides my wife and my son.
And passion feeds passion. Perfect segue into the first topic. All right. Because I sent you a message on Twitter right after, and we had talked about this throughout the college basketball season too, because I aired like several like frustrations And like over the last couple of years, we've talked about like what the difference is with like an Oscar team, for Kentucky a few years ago. If we were down 2, we were not going to win the game because we couldn't score enough. And we would never make up the points that it would take. This year, if we were down 2, there was no way in hell we were going to win that game. Like for the most part, we would have to trade 3s for 2s, and we'd have to stop the other team's 2s. Then the news comes one day, John Calipari is going to Arkansas after it seemed like he was at least going to get one more year. And like the big coaching, so I had flashbacks to after Tubby Smith left, and it was like the whole hunt was for Billy Donovan. It really bummed me out when that was part of the hunt again this time too, where it's like the dude's been 2 decades in the NBA, man. Everybody in Kentucky, wake up! It's not 2008 anymore. Like it was just crazy that it was like again, like that was the name on all of it. There was, Scott Drew. Everybody kept saying Danny Hurley, like there was any chance in hell that Danny Hurley was going to leave Connecticut. And, Rick Pitino even jumped back into the mix. After all of that, it ended up being Mark Pope. And the first reaction from me and the first reaction from Kentucky fans is like a hangover from what the Calipari era has been. In middle school and in high school, when John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins and the first Cal teams happened, we won that championship. We were winning big games. It was a swagger that fueled the person that I ended up. Oh, damn it! I think I'm buffering here for a second.
No, I hear you. I got you. For a second is up, but we're good now.
Now, and so
I think. Yeah.
No, I can hear you. And it's like, you go back to that Calipari 30 for 30 where he's like, you're going to hate me because I couldn't, like, that was a feeling we all loved. We loved being hated to that level. And Calipari was a person that personality traits were very much made for this coaching role. Enter Mark Pope, and it's a very different situation. And what at first was like Kentucky fans being like, oh my God, like we really must have struck out on every level, has immediately turned into overwhelming enthusiasm for the guy who I think Mark Pope could not have handled this very early transition better than he did.
Yeah, no, and I would say, I mean, I don't know that, he'll be as well. I don't know. I mean, I guess Calipari. I know that he has a bad tournament record, but he was also at BYU and Utah Valley, right? No, he wasn't even at Utah Valley. Who was he at before BYU?
No, he was at Utah Valley.
Was it Utah Valley? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. I for a second was getting Madsen confused. But that means nothing to me. I think it could be. Look, sometimes you gotta let sometimes the fan base doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. And that goes from myself included on some of these. I remember when Clemson, legendary defensive coordinator in college football was Bud Foster at Virginia Tech. He interviewed for Clemson. And he was like the hottest name in the coaching industry. He really could have got a head coaching job, but he just he was very picky about where he'd want to be. So he interviews for Clemson. One of the only interviews he ever took as Frank Beamer's, top assistant. That was the highest paid assistant in college football. And all of Clemson wanted him. And I'm not saying Bud Foster, he's been on our show before. He's a great guy, but they ended up hiring this guy who was a not even a position coach named Dabo Sweeney over him. I'm just saying, sometimes you're not back behind the scenes. I think Mark Pope's proven to be a good coach. Now, it remains to be seen whether he can win in March or win national championships or whatever. But I kind of like it better than some of the ones you said. Like Billy Donovan's been gone for a while. Sometimes I don't think NBA coaches fit in college basketball. You look at Mike Woodson. I know Donovan's got the track record, almost like Pitino. But majority of the NBA coaches that come down, I feel like, are failures. They just fired Juwan Howard at Michigan. It's more than ever in my life, I feel like, is the college game just way different than the NBA game. It's almost like a different sport to me. And I think people shouldn't panic because I think Mark Pope, he's a proven winner to me. He's won wherever he's gone. And to win at BYU is challenging. I mean, yes, there's the angle of saying, you can get the 28-year-old kids. Yeah, I'm sure that helps a little bit. But at the same time, recruiting-wise, it's fucking hard. I'll be honest. That's the last school in the country I would go to, probably. But I say that with love, you know what I mean? But I don't think it, I don't think there's any real selling to me of, hey, come to Provo. Yes, the fan base is exciting, but you can't. Part of college is, hey, I want to meet women and have cocktails. You know what I mean? Like, and I just feel like BYU would be the fun. I would choose. I'd go to like University of Alaska before I would fucking go to BYU. So I think for to win there is, you know, and he did pretty well considering, you know, the previous couple BYU coaches. So I think it's something to be optimistic about. And the main thing is you didn't have to pay $34 million to get Calipari out of there. So now it will be hilarious if Calipari wins at Arkansas. So I know that's going to be I can't wait. Greg Sankey, please don't mess this up. I want to see 2 games. I want to see at Rupp, and I want to see in Fayetteville. Please put these games on the schedule because I think it's going to be, you know, some of the best regular season ratings next year. But that's going to be the interesting thing because Calipari, you know, my knock against him was college basketball changed when the shoe companies owned college basketball. Pat Forty did a good article about this recently. I don't know how good of a coach you really were. You know what I mean? Like, I really don't. Like, maybe the UMass coaching job, but like Memphis and Kentucky, yes, you won a bunch of games with really talented rosters that were all connected to these shoe companies where you saw it with Louisville, you saw it with all the powers. I'm not just saying it's Kentucky and Louisville and stuff. It was everyone that was a player in college basketball for about 40 years had these deals through the shoe company so you could really load up your rosters. I don't think that works anymore. You know, I think there's probably a fine line of having a little bit of that. I mean, the shoe companies don't control college basketball anymore, but I'm just saying, like, having some key freshmen, but you have to go out in the portal and you have to be able to get some guys, and, you know, your culture is everything. I think, you know, your culture really matters. You'd be hard pressed to not look at a team to go get some key portals, but also coaching matters more than it did then. To me, like, you would just trot out your best players. And I know people say, look, and I've been loving college basketball since like 1990. But I like Tarkanian, amazing coach. Coach K, amazing coach. But I almost think they were in cruise control. You know what I mean? You put out 5 NBA players, you're gonna at least make it to the Elite 8. You know, like, I don't think coaching mattered as much as it does today. And I think that's something we have to see Calipari change, because I really, like I said, I don't know that he's really done a great coaching job. And that includes some of the better Kentucky teams or Memphis teams. I think his best coaching job was probably taking UMass to the Final Four with Camby.
Yeah, and overall, what he turned UMass into, you know, like over a longer period of time, because they had those great rivalries, you know, with all those different, Northeastern teams that all had strong programs at the time too. The thing about Calipari is that, like, there's this deep, seedy backstory that goes to him, which I always loved as, like, you know, him being our coach. The whole thing with Worldwide West, the whole thing where it's like, dude, why can John Calipari get into rooms that the president of the United States can't get into? Like, it doesn't make any sense, but it was fun. It was fun. And so now, you know, we kind of overcorrect, but here's the thing. Mark Pope did do a fantastic job in bringing BYU into the Big 12, and it hopefully shuts a lot of people up about, you know, what the quality was of those BYU and UC teams, you know, that were doing so good in other places. And Houston, my God, for, you know, for all the things that people said about Houston when they were, you know, a 1 seed or ranked number 1, it's like, all right, can everybody shut the hell up now? Because, you know, Houston went in and did what they did in the Big 12 this year. But Mark Pope, you know, what did Kentucky fans ask for? We wanted someone who was good with X's and O's. We got what we asked for. We want someone who cares about the University of Kentucky winning, not just sending players to the pros. Mark Pope is that. You know, we want someone who is building a team through the transfer portal and building a team for a more specific setup, because this whole narrative has been like, you know, Calipari recruits the best players and makes a system that's for them. And it's like, just win. Since when?
Yeah.
We gave up doing the best things that we did for a while. When Cal came to Kentucky, he was a dribble drive guy, and John Wall dominated in that style of play early on. At some point, and this was the biggest thing, was that Kentucky fans, I think, just lost trust that Cal cared whether Kentucky won or not. You know, when you're playing players for more minutes because they were the 5-star guys, and or you're not playing people as much because you don't want their draft stock to fall. It's like, what is this for? Is this for?
Yeah.
And this is where an understanding of the NBA does help you out with an understanding of how college basketball works right now. Is you go back to 2010 even. There was a big difference between being a first rounder and a second rounder, and there was a huge difference between being a second round draft pick and an undrafted free agent. Now, definitely not. There's so many professional basketball opportunities to the point where the first, second round pick is almost the same as the last undrafted free agent. These guys are going to bounce around and do a stint here and there. Like it's good money for them. And if you're the kind of college player too, like a Jacob Gilliard from Richmond, who, shows that you can pass and you can play defense, that allows you to hang around. They just need a few defensive players on every roster.
Well, and every, like, to me, I know he brought in a little bit of transfers over the past couple of years, but still, you have to be able to, like, every other team, and I think this is evident whether we're talking Kentucky or whoever. John Shire at Duke is another guy to me that he's got to hit the portal. Like you got to bring in some veterans, or you got to coach better. One of the two. And I think you need more veterans. But we saw Josh Golke. He was on the show with us. I'm sorry, Jack Golke. Jeez. Jack Golke was on our show. And, every team can go out and get – that guy was playing – what was it, D3 or was it D2? I don't even remember.
He was like a D3 bench warmer. It was something insane.
For football and basketball, because I think it's a corrupt system more so than basketball. So in basketball, though, you've seen so many 15 and 16 seeds win over the past 5-6 years, really since the portal became a thing. Yes, more people are playing basketball on planet Earth than ever before. I feel like the sports, from a global standpoint, is better than ever. But the fact that you can go address a weakness if you're a mid-major and bring in someone, or not even a mid-major. Look at UConn. Getting Cam Spencer and Tristan Newton and some of the other guys, Aline from Virginia Tech, those were huge. Yet they don't win a national championship without Tristan Newton both years. He was huge to them. But also the mid-majors. You look at the teams, like I said, Golke came in as a grad transfer this past year. You look at a lot of the teams that have won these games, and that makes it so the teams you're playing, if you were to compare that to me, the team, like the 15 seeds now or the 16 seeds now to 20 years ago, I would lay like 15 points with today's game because they can address a weakness. Think about how many bad teams before would make the tournament. You're like, damn it, if we had one rebounder, we could really go, to the Sweet 16. Well, now you can go get that rebounder every offseason or whatever the weakness of your team is. And I think it puts more pressures on the coaches to actually coach. And, for whatever reason, Calipari had his struggles lately. And I don't know if he's going to have a way out of that. He's going to have to put in the work. I know he's putting in the work on the recruiting trail, but it's also he was behind the University of Kentucky, which is the winningest basketball program in the history of college hoops. It's a lot easier to do that when you're a name brand like that. Now you're going to Arkansas, which still obviously, is a respected program, but it's going to be interesting to see how he responds to it because, he did leave $34 million on the table. He is, somewhat Arkansas. Jerome Tang turned down Arkansas. Chris Beard turned down Arkansas. So I think if you got to have a competitive streak inside of you. If not, why are you even coaching? We'll see if he can go back to the drawing board and figure some things out, because to me, he hasn't been a very good coach over the past 5, 6, 7 seasons. So I'm fascinated to see it, though, man.
And that's the part that really killed me this year. This was a team that scored 90 points a game, as compared to the last few years, it was a team that actually won big games against big teams. You know, like we beat North Carolina, we beat Alabama and Auburn. We beat Tennessee. You know, it was like this was, and we should have beaten Gonzaga. Like for all the times we've had a crack at Gonzaga and didn't get them, it keeps me up at night. But this was a team that I felt like had corrected some of those errors, and I thought that all the talk last year was just wait till next year. Like you see, and it was the last time that we got duped by this recruiting class thing. Like it's like, dude, like not making it past the first round again in a team that definitely could have gone to a Final Four really kills you. And so but now you see Arkansas already.
But I mean, they could have got.
Sorry, it froze for a second. What'd you say?
Okay. I missed the last thing you said.
Oh, damn it. Just that, like, it really killed us this year that, like, a team that could have gone to the Final Four made an early exit again for the same reasons. And it was the last time that I think Kentucky fans were going to get duped by this recruiting class, like this bag of fool's gold. That Arkansas, I could see them starting off with a momentum. Calipari tends to, and he's bringing pieces along that he's familiar with. I could see it being a good start, but Arkansas is already enjoying the ride that we enjoyed for so long of like Calipari has just agreed to become UK's head coach. John Wall just signed with Kentucky. DeMarcus Cousins just signed with Kentucky. It is like an emotional rush, but it was the last time that it's like, dude, I don't care what the recruiting class says. I'm tired. I don't care how like what Pope's recruiting chops at the high. I'm tired of hearing about recruiting. It was, and that's like a result of Calipari. The thing is, Calipari linking up with Kentucky basketball when he did, and John Wall in particular, that like changed college sports in a lot of ways. It changed the way that we've looked at college basketball players. And I don't know if we have the NIL right now if it wasn't for the cultural phenomena that kind of happened when John Calipari did go to Kentucky. But I do think that like we got everything that we asked for in Mark Pope, even though it wasn't exactly what we had in mind when we were asking for these things. But what does it say to you about Kentucky that this was a place that a lot of the big name coaching candidates that we were looking for didn't really think it was the right spot for them?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's the winningest program in history, and with that comes a ton of pressure. I don't blame Scott Drew. I think if I was Scott Drew, I don't think I would have taken it because like if he just stays at Baylor another 5-10 years, they're gonna build him a statue. So it's like, do I take the bag, leave for Kentucky, and they could run me out even though I'm Calipari did have winning seasons. It's not like they were losing. You know what I mean? You had huge wins. So to me, it puts a lot of pressure on it. And I think we'll see that in general, just moving forward. We'll see. I think Kalen DeBoer leaving in football from Washington to Alabama is a risky play by him because you're going you're following Nick Saban, but B, the fans expect so much now after 20 years of dominance that it really, it'll be interesting to see. But I don't think it's a knock on Kentucky's program. I think Kentucky's got money. Kentucky's got the key ingredient to me. You got fans that care. That's what you need. And Kentucky, I think, has some of the best fans that care. So them, and I know your arch rivals breaking in a brand new head coach too, and that's going to be fascinating to watch with Pat Kelsey down there at Louisville. I appreciate the that old folks home where they got in a fight about 10 years ago over Kentucky and Louisville basketball. Maybe that was a little longer. I think it was 10 years ago. But I'm curious your thoughts on how Mark Stoops. You think he lit up a cigar, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and said, "Bye, Calipari"?
Dude, we talked right after that happened too, because it was so dumb. Like the fact that I don't know, Kentucky has had to become a like quasi football school by like just the economics that are driving the changes in college sports. The real thing with Kentucky, though, is like football wise, I don't know how really committed we are in this moment to being a football school. What we have decided we want to do is become QBU. And it's, it's sexy, but like, it's good for 7-5 to 9-3 at your best, unfortunately. Like it's a weird spot for Kentucky football too. But the thing is, with the expanded playoff, Kentucky can get a lot more money for doing exactly what we're doing right now, which is you go 7-5 and 9-3 with the bullshit advantages that we're going to get because we're in the SEC. That's going to be worth a lot of money once the playoff is getting to 12, 16, and it's only going to, people will argue with you now and say that a 32 team playoff is stupid, like you've advocated for years. But like, we know that this playoff is slowly going to increase. The question is just why not now?
Yeah. I love that logic of people that think, why, that first off, they're pushing to make it a 96 team basketball tournament. I mean, you don't think this is coming for football? Not you, but I'm saying the person I argue with. But yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it is a new day and age, and I think that is especially for teams in the Power Four now, we'll call it. I think Kentucky, it's like you look 10, 20 years down the road. I think the fact you'll have access in the SEC to this, I really think they're in a good position to become whatever they want to become. I mean, their baseball team's also getting better too, but like they're in a spot where they could be a football school in a way. Like I know they're still, like you would think, basketball school, winningest program ever, but in general, all it takes is one player, and I do think there's talk of separation from the NCAA and power schools leaving or to form their own thing, and obviously anyone in the SEC or Big Ten would go. The model doesn't exist without them, so you're in a good spot. And then at that point, when you talk about revenue sharing and stuff, and it becomes the NFL. And I almost think if you're a Kentucky fan, that's like, hey, this is perfect because now we'll have the same amount of money to spend as say Alabama or something. So they're in a good spot as far as that regards. I'm not thrilled about the future of college. I think it's kind of crazy the talk that's happening, but I'm just an idiot talking into the microphone. There's billions at stake in this other stuff,
And I'm realizing now just how many topics we could cover just that could like spider web out of what we're talking about right now. But, something that's not being discussed maybe as much, there's been obviously ESPN has every reason in the world to promote as many women's college sports as possible because they own every single contract right to all these games that are being played. It just occurred to me this year. I was like, oh, right. They're the sole broadcaster really of the women's college tournament. Of course they're promoting the shit out of it.
Yeah.
But the real thing that teams need to consider and that people need to get used to is this last year, women's college basketball changed some things. And these last couple of years of NIL for women's college sports that aren't even the traditional biggest sports has changed stuff. Like if you want to be a top tier sports program moving forward in this day and age, you got to go out and you've got to find your Livy Dunns and you've got to make sure that they have TikTok followers. That's going to matter. And otherwise Iowa is like, they're getting, whatever money comes from winning a national championship or going to the national championship game and producing a game that was watched by 15 million people, so that is going to factor into the power moving forward. And so there's a lot of people that like, this is not what we're used to seeing. But who knows whether anything that's happening is good or bad right now. Certainly feels bad when the NIT gets rid of auto bids. Despite my aggressive harassment strategy of the NIT's Twitter account, but that was so. At first, watching that NIT selection show, and it's like, okay, 17-15 LSU, 17-15 Georgia, 16-17 Xavier, and it's like, this was dog shit. This was exactly what you thought. Now, look, maybe if a bunch of teams weren't soft as hell and turned down the NIT, that whole thing started by Ben Simmons and like all of LSU just being like, well, Ben's not going, so we're not going. Like, what the hell are you talking about? So now it's weird that with all the more media exposure and all, we get to watch more mid-major and D2 college sport. Every D3 conference has its own streaming network online that you can go to. For all of this, the fight remains keeping, those like Greg Sankey from pushing out all of the rest of the college sports conferences and making it mean way less. Talking about a separate playoff is disgusting for small teams and for big teams.
Yes. And I forget who wrote an article. Someone did a great piece. Man, it was a newspaper. And I'm not going to be able to give them the justice they deserve. But it was, their argument was that the SEC and Big Ten have to do this because with the NIL, it's going to even the field. So if Grand Canyon, which has a gigantic alumni or whoever, right? BYU, whoever, right? They could go and outbid Kentucky or Alabama or Michigan or Ohio State. And guess what? They could then steal the power in a way. If they get the top athlete, whatever school for whatever reason. If a rich, let's just say, the fucking guy that owns Amazon, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. I think he's a New Mexico grad, right? At one point. If he wanted to, Bezos, he could throw in, he's a billionaire. What if he's like, here's $100 million, put the best roster together, New Mexico football and basketball. What's stopping him from doing that? Nothing. Now, that's the scary part for, I think that, and this was the article saying that this is why they want to supersede from the rest of college basketball and the NCAA or whatever. Isn't right now with a lot of those programs were cheating fucking time. And if you know the history of like SMU or Houston, I know SMU was cheating, and I'm sure Houston probably was too at some point. But A&M and Texas would rat on them, right? And they had to hire people up in politics, so they really cost those universities like hundreds of millions of dollars by them not being a part of the Big 12 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It's a dirty game when you really look at it like that, and it's always been, the elite trying to stay elite. Well, I kind of thought this article made a lot of sense, and I had never thought of it like that, of why would Sankey be pushing for this? Why would they talk about having, 40, 20 team conferences, and they could split off in 96 team NCAA tournaments where no auto bids to the mid majors? That is all awful to me, but I also see the threat. And I thought the article made, and like I said, I'm doing no justice by, I don't even know who wrote the article, but it's an interesting thing to think about. And maybe that's driving it, because with, each state, with their NIL laws, all different. You look at Missouri football is a good one to look at. They had an incentive where they could pay you in high school. So they got the number one recruit in the nation, Luther Burden, the wideout. And they were able to just put NIL there. They were just connected to their state politics, like the university and their state politics, for whatever reason. I don't know why, and it's been beneficial for them, as you saw with last year's football season. Well, I think that threatens Alabama. I think that threatens whoever your top teams are, USC or Michigan. If more states started doing that, then I think you could sit there and say, wait, and I think that's Greg Sankey's attempt. It makes sense to me, the article that I was reading, that could be a at play, and that's why they want to stay powerful, because you look at some of these schools and the amount of money they make off of football or basketball, then it makes a lot of sense that they would want to somehow stay powerful.
I mean, that's like, why are we always surprised, and why are sports fans, especially like just the more mouth breathery type that just like is just like an apologist for everything that the NFL or NCAA does or whatever? You know who I'm talking about? Is like, oh, I think that's a good price. I like it that way, and it's like, well, you suck. Like that's why why the Michigan Panthers are playing inside in the Mall of America. And
exactly.
and so wasn't it like just a slap in the face or just hilarious? Maybe I think maybe hilarious is a better way to put it when we're watching Nick Saban on Capitol Hill talking about how he just can't believe that the sport's become so much about money. Get the hell out of here.
Oh, I'm sorry you broke up, but that was a fucking comedy, man. I could not believe, and the fact that I don't know, like SNL should have done a bit on that. Anyone that knows Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher hinted at this when they got in their little feud. He said, "Look how he did. Look how the devil did his deal." I have personally known, I mean, at LSU under the city, sit there and say that to go up to Capitol Hill, which I just find in general hilarious anyway. It's like, you know, we got fucking real problems and we got, what the hell is this hearing? You know what I mean? Like, what? And to sit there and say, like, what did he say? He goes, my wife, the story, I don't even believe this fucking story. This story was so much bullshit. He goes, my wife, well, look, I don't always have the team over, the recruits over for dinner. And my wife makes them breakfast. And, this year she came to me, or last year she came to me and she said, honey, this year they all want money. Right? I'm like, oh, shut the fuck up. Like, nothing has changed. And look, it's above the table now, but don't insult my fucking intelligence. Like, I just couldn't believe that. I'm like, wait, so let me get this straight. I'm sure I've been to Alabama. You think Bryce Young would want to leave Pasadena, California, which, like I said, Alabama, I'm not trying to shit on Alabama, but the last place you would, one of the last places you would think, just randomly, out of Pasadena, California, you have USC, who has the most draft picks in the history of college football. Right down the road there. You don't think that would be more appealing than, say, Tuscaloosa? It's not like Saban has some unbelievable track record with quarterbacks either. There was Tua, I understand, but it's not like a lot of those guys. One of McCarron's is in the XFL. You got Blake Sims from back of there. You got, I mean, there's a bunch. It's not like he was like some quarterback factory. So you want me to believe that he just randomly he loved Tuscaloosa. He always dreamed of playing for Tuscaloosa. I can't buy into that shit. So like when I hear that speech, I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I thought it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
It's like when like a serial killer or a murderer says something like, well, and then like I installed the air conditioner and they said, well, why like something that like clearly was not a real human interaction. And it's like, that's how much of a psychopath Nick Saban is, to where it's like, wow, he came up with that story and he said, perfect. Like this is perfect. No edits needed. Dude, those are just like insulting lies. And it's like, so what, you're telling me that these players, they came over to your house and they asked for a bag full of money and refused the breakfast you made them? Get the hell out of here.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't order the blueberry pancakes. I ordered $100,000. All right. No, I mean, and to sit there and he goes, and when I started out in this profession, it was not like this. I'm like, how about Texas A&M gave Eric Dickerson a fucking gold Corvette?
And he didn't even go there.
Yeah, I know. And they came down heavy on SMU. I mean, SMU was cheating, but they came down way heavier than them than they should have because of all that shit. But I mean, there's stories about Bear Bryant at the University of Texas A&M, or I hate to come down all on Texas A&M, but my point is that this shit's been happening for a long time. But there was crop dusting, like farmers, and they would pay. Texas has all these farms, and they would essentially get the Texas A&M or Texas State, a flag of the Longhorns. You fly over the farm, you drop the flag folded up with like $100,000 or $50,000. I read a story in 1956, I think it was, where they dropped like $5,000 or something in a Texas A&M flag, and it's like, you want me to, like, Nick Saban sitting there? Oh no, this didn't exist. What the fuck are you talking about, Nick Saban? When you were first being born, people were buying players. All right, I mean this goes back quite a ways.
It's just funny. Like Kentucky fans bothered me with this too, because look, man, I've been a Kentucky fan my entire life. I was lucky to be born in a state and have like parents that went to the school, and it's like you get to be a real part of like what is the greatest what I will always argue is the greatest college basketball program to this day. Give Connecticut another 3 decades. See how that holds up. We saw UCLA win about 10 in a row from 1958 to 1968. So let's see where that goes. But I will argue with anybody that Kentucky is the greatest college basketball program to ever exist. But dude, like we've been paying, like we're no better than like we're not on a moral high ground because we're better. Like we've been obviously paying players and doing all the at the very least, man. Players don't for a long time didn't go to class like normal. I don't know what the deal is like now, where you're basically an entrepreneur as a student. Like I don't even know what class looks like now for a major college athlete. I have no
I
idea.
think since COVID, everything's online.
I did half the law school like online. Like I don't know what it's like to be a college basketball player who I just assume I'm assuming there's tutors that mostly do this stuff. But like, dude, you can't be a Kentucky fan and have your head buried in the sand about the fact. I just had to go early on with like, all right, I think that they probably should get paid if somebody wants to pay them to play. Like, because I know Mac would probably have a slightly different opinion on this, but like, this is the United States of America. I am not about telling people that they can't make money off of their name or their representation. Now, I do start to say, like, dude, it's up to the school whether they want to pay athletes as like employees. If that's like something that comes down from the Supreme Court or whatever. Like, I was never going to say that I thought every player should have a stipend. But if there is a price tag next to your name, I do think that you should have the ability to cash in on that.
Yeah.
America.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that's the tricky slope. And I one of the things I loved about like when NIL was going legal, I thought it was so funny that I don't probably Kentucky fans too, but I felt like I was arguing with a lot of Alabama fans. They were saying this is ruining the game. I'm like, what? I'm like, I love that perception in your mind of like is ruining the game when I know like Bobby Humphrey in 1991 got 50 grand to come to sign there. It's like. What world are we living under here? Like whatever fits your narrative, I guess, is what they want. Now that it's out in the open, it's like, no, we were never like that.
And this is Kentucky was one of the first programs hit with a major point shaving scandal. And so along with that, naturally was going to come like, all right, like we don't want the players falling into the mob's hands anymore up there in the Poconos waiting tables with Bob Cousy in the summer. Like there's got to be this. It's everything's like symptoms of what is the actual disease. Is like for a long time the thing about college sports was like awesome, but like it was never like eventually it got so big that there was no way to stop anybody from making money.
Yeah, and that's the sad part though, is that there's no commissioner. I always wonder, is this thing gonna boil over? And when it boils over, I'm 41 years old. I still think I would, if I was a kid right now, I would still be loving college football, college basketball, college baseball. I would be all about those sports, but it has changed a lot from where I grew up, and I don't really want to see Rutgers take on UCLA. You know what I mean? And stuff, all this at Cal taking on. We got a Cal against Clemson conference game. This sounds horrible to me. Like I don't understand how we could have rivalries for so long and conferences. The Pac-12 just went away. That was a 120-year conference or something. Our generation, my generation, is probably the ones at the head of this. I understand you could say where TV money came into the universities, they started spending crazy and stuff like that and cheating crazy. But there's no one behind the wheel of the car to look out for the sport. That's where it's scary to me, man. And I hope the administrators for each university have some self-awareness of protecting Kentucky and Louisville, protecting, to me, things that matter. Why do we care about the game? Yes, we like football and basketball, but we want to see Army Navy. We want to see, these teams playing each other every year like they've done for the past, in football, you're talking since really right around where the Civil War ended. A lot of those teams it goes back that far. Basketball, it's well over 100 years as well. Schools where you get people that are saying, "Oh, it's exciting. USC's in the Big Ten." We'll see if that's exciting in 5 years. It might be exciting for this upcoming year. I don't know that it's exciting long term because I don't know many people that would be excited about them playing Maryland or Minnesota.
And I'm interested to see the ways that like being in the Big Ten might end up benefiting USC and UCLA. I do think like it's going to be a more advantageous time slots a lot of the time. Like you're joining the big conference, like there's going to be advantages to that. On the other hand, who the hell are USC and UCLA? Like, dude, like how many times in the last 20 years have you seen USC or okay, not 20, let's go back after a national championship.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen them start the year preseason number one? Because of the talent that they brought in, they end up 8-4 or worse. Like
well, and that's part of the problem with the Pac-12 is like they got leadership. Their presidents were all very pretentious, and they like Chip Kelly just left to be an offensive coordinator at Ohio State because they stop caring a little bit about football. I would say they haven't really cared the way you should about football since the mid 90s, probably, or late 90s. And that's concerning because you live in a place with a bunch of fucking recruits. USC is one though that I don't know. I mean, I know they had recruiting sanctions against them after, but I think they benefit from this. UCLA, we don't know, but I think USC probably will benefit from this. Yeah, the time zone thing's interesting, but the amount of money the Big Ten is going to be making, the kid that would get stolen away to Arizona or Arizona State, I don't think they're going to be able to compete financially with USC and maybe even UCLA too. I mean, UCLA's campus, man, is absolutely incredible. But you see that like if you're Arizona and Arizona State before, yeah, the kid that just won the Heisman, Jaden Daniels, who transferred after Herm Edwards got fired. He's from Pasadena, California. He was at Arizona State his first two or three seasons. And that's what I mean is Arizona State's had a history, or Arizona schools or Utah. Utah's teams are filled with LA kids. Cam Rising, their starting quarterback right now, is from LA. And you wonder that probably all affects USC a little bit, them not missing out one or two guys. Well, now if they're making so much money off this Big Ten deal, well, are they going to be able to just buy the backup quarterback or the guy that would be starting at Arizona State to be the backup at USC? Potentially. I think that scares to me to the future of college football is like if you're going to have this thing separate and just have so much money for the Big Ten and SEC.
And we know UCLA is pretty strict apparently with how they enforce in-stadium behavior. As I know you can.
I am on a list. Feels good to be on a list. Yeah, I went to a LSU UCLA game and I cheered for UCLA too. So look, no UCLA fans were there. This was week 1 too. Or week actually
specifically because I think it was the game that you called for LSU to go in and beat them.
No, I called for UCLA to beat them because the SEC actually has a pretty bad record in the Pacific time zone for the most part since like the 1990s. So I just thought that I was like, man, it's different. You go out to the West, the style of ball is different, and the time zones all wacky, just like you just touched on for them joining the Big Ten. And so I called for UCLA to upset them, and I went to the game. There wasn't many UCLA fans because they play like 2 hours away from their university. That's an argument for another episode. But yeah, I mean, I was intoxicated, but I was cheering.
Most would encourage that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a wine and cheese crowd there. And I was cheering too hard for UCLA, and security asked me to leave. And I left, and I watched the game in the parking lot with some. Actually, it was like a tailgate like a group of Mexicans, and one of them just got out of jail. He's like, "Hey, want a beer?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and it was great. I had a great time, but it was pretty ridiculous to me. I was a guy that went to East Carolina. That was the way I cheered for UCLA that game. Because remember, there was a shit ton of LSU fans. It was like a normal cheering experience for me. Like when you're I was trying to make it ruckus for UCLA, and they're just like, who is this guy? Like, I know I'm drunk, but I'm like, okay, so is the whole stadium. You're the ones that's been selling me the alcohol. It's not like I smuggled it in. You know what I mean? Like,
Not a dance recital.
yeah. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Yeah. Am I drunk? Sure. And I would hope that anyone else going to a football game, is drunk or wants, if they want to get drunk, can get drunk. But yeah, so that UCLA, the fan base is a little fickle.
Wouldn't you love to see a Arkansas go into UCLA and bring their fan base along?
Oh man,
someone bites off a nose as someone who's enjoying a nice Chianti.
Do you remember the Arkansas fan? This was in baseball like 2 years ago. He picked up a possum or a wreck. I think it was a possum. He's just drunk, and there's a possum running through, and everyone's getting up from their stands, and he just grabs this thing almost like, like back of the collar, just lifts it up, and the crowd starts to go wild. He chugs his beer, right, and then walks to go put it outside. One of my favorite stories ever, because later in the night he did check himself into the hospital with rabies. But one of my favorite stories, and their fan base is fantastic, and that would be amazing to see that. That's the only benefit if we get these super conferences. Is that will be unavoidable then. Is like getting in Arkansas, UCLA or something, that would just be hilarious.
And it's a chicken and the egg conversation, right? Because like Kentucky gets a lot of advantages that, in baseball and in football for sure, that we got because we were in the SEC. At the same time, when Kentucky travels in basketball and a lot of other things, the stadiums are packed with blue. It's hard fault a university where it's like, dude, we were shouldering the load for half of the places that we were going into in the SEC for so long. Like, we were the attendance figures in those away games. And then you look at USC. Why does it not matter in this move that these time zones are going to be crazy and they're going to be playing in New Jersey at noon Eastern time? Oh my God, it's because it doesn't matter when the USC fans are going to be watching TV. It doesn't matter because this is like selling an NFL team as opposed to selling a college team. It doesn't matter that the USC fans aren't going to be, tailgating and watching those games wherever they might be. That's the sad thing, is that like USC gets treated like an NFL team, earlier than other. But right now it's like, oh, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter if people from Southern California could be watching these games. That's not the point for these broadcasters.
Yeah, no, and Miami's another one you can throw in there. It's interesting. That's we had Randy Cross on our show a couple times. Great guy, former San Francisco 49er offensive lineman, won a bunch of Super Bowls with Joe Montana and Steve Young. And he grew up in LA. He lives in Atlanta now, but he grew up in LA and went to UCLA in the 80s. And he was saying that it was different then. Like fans showed up then, like the pride of each university and stuff. My theory is just living in LA, and I would assume it's the same way with Miami. You go back and look at like Miami under Jimmy Johnson or Dennis Erickson in the 90s. They were packed. The Orange Bowl was packed. Two things here. You got to have the stadium very close to campus. That's rule number one, especially in LA where the traffic is the worst in the nation. But number two to me is, I think they get it. They're kind of international cities. The world got smaller. Like the world got smaller, and you have so much different cultures that have come in that just don't give a shit anymore about like football and basketball as much. You know what I mean? Like I think that was Randy Cross's point, but he was saying that you had so many different there's such a diverse city. There's like, if you go to Hollywood, there's a bunch of Russians. A lot of people don't know that. A ton of Russian people. Right? You go, Glendale, it's a ton of Armenians. Right? You go like there. It's a real different LA than it was 30, 40 years ago. And I think the same can be said for Miami. I don't know it as well because I've never lived there, but I've heard similar stories. But I do think that probably affects your universities long term. And I mean, you got to put your sports first, which UCLA also doesn't do. But
I think that's the bigger point too, is that I don't know what it comes. I guess it comes from pretentiousness because it comes from like some stuff politically, especially in California right now, where it's like,
oh yeah,
I don't know, for some reason, like football is akin to like your take on immigration or something. Like like it's the same thing for people. And as I'm sure you know, in the in the SEC region, it's not like that. Like and here's the bigger thing is a lot of these schools want to pretend like they favor academics. That's the number. We're an academic institution. We put academics first. You are wrong about how to go about that. Like, where are the new buildings coming from? Where are you getting, 30,000, 40,000 students, enrolling every year if you're a major university? Or how are you getting, that like thousands and thousands of applicants if you're a smaller, university that favors academics more? It's this idea like, well, like it's people that almost don't know how like money works. It's like, well, like, we're an academic institution. It's like, dude, people are not donating by the millions for the most part for academic purposes. The way you get the new buildings and not look like you're a giant parking garage built in 1972 is through the money of people who, one, had a great time being a student there. They have fond memories associated with it. They want to go back. That's where those donors are coming from. And, on the same note, the people that are donating to the school that just see the financial potential in it as a sports investment. So it's all these people that want to say that they run academic institutions. Have fun doing that while you watch the bottom line plummet, because
yeah, no, that's a great point, man. And I think we're at this. I can't help but laugh when I see the ACC's Florida State and Clemson complain. Look, I understand that the SEC and Big Ten are about to have a shit ton more money than them. Like, not like a shit ton more money than them. But I also believe that they're full of shit. Like, they are complaining. First off, I would love to know what is the right amount. It's still 11 on 11 or 5 on 5 in basketball. That you can't tell me that spending the most money just automatically wins you the championship. There's got to be a medium there where you can do, there's got to be a number where it stops. You know what I mean? Where, okay, $20 million, it's like you still only have 11 players on the field at once. You know what I mean? And yes, I'm sure money helps all of that, but I also think they're still full of shit. They're like, well, we don't know how. Well, I forget if it was Florida State or Clemson, but they're like, well, we don't know how we could run our athletic department without we see the money coming in with the Big Ten and the SEC. We don't know how we could do it. Oh, really? You don't know how you could do it? We only have about a 100 year. I'd have to dive into what year Clemson started football, but life existed without a TV contract. College football existed for over 100 years, really, without cable TV contracts, which is essentially what bought it all. That happened in the 80s, late 70s, stuff like that. Notre Dame, I guess, had a deal with NBC, but I'm saying the blueprint's been there. So don't try to, to me, that was another thing at Congress they were saying. It's like, we're just going to get left behind. It's like, oh, fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, you can still field a good team. You can still do this. Like, stop acting like this. Your university's been benefiting. You hoard yourself out to these TV contracts, essentially. And now that you're in a spot where geographically they want to go something different, I feel sorry for Oregon State and Washington State and stuff, but at the same time, don't give me this shit. You can still run the sport fine. Okay, TV contract or not.
And that's the annoying thing too, is especially in this transition period for Kentucky, is Dude, like, give Texas and Miami all the football money you want. Like, I still put Kentucky up against Miami right now as it stands.
Yes, they beat them right now. Yes.
Like, dude, we know that Texas and a bunch of other schools too that are trying to make the come up, like Ole Miss and schools like that. We know that they have massive amounts of money to work with. Texas has been doing it before you were allowed to do it,
Yeah.
for 50 years. And what do they have to show for it in recent times, despite all of that money? And Texas A&M,
One national championship for
Texas
Texas. Yeah.
A&M putting together the most expensive, highest ranked recruiting class that we've ever seen. They went 7-5. Like
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Boise State was a community college in like 1978. It's like, and they have been not allowed to the party. If you let them to the party, they probably build and get more momentum and more NIL. That, college football has always been corrupt like that. They couldn't get a chance to be a part of the party. But it's still like they've beaten this. They have wins against Georgia. They have wins against Florida State. They have wins against Oregon and Virginia Tech. And, they've proven it that there's a blueprint for this. You don't necessarily need that. Now, yes, you have to put football first or basketball first, whatever your thing is, or sports first. But I cry me a river on this shit. Like, these universities, like I took took some screenwriting classes in at UCLA. I can recall an incident where I went to I bought a textbook for about $300. First day of class, this professor says, "Hey, just gonna let you know, I hate that textbook. We're not studying one thing from that textbook." Right? So I'm like, damn it. I go back to the bookstore that I bought it at. I go to return it, and they're like, "Yeah, it's used." Well, I go, "No, I never used it, but you bought it. Well, I'll give you $50 for it." $50. So you've been ripping off people for a long fucking time, universities. All right. So stop it. I'm not going to be upset that your TV contract, like, to me, like Clemson and Florida State, it's like, you signed this deal. You thought Clemson's president says this deal when he signed it was like, it gives us security in the future. This is the best thing we could have done. And now, things change a little bit. Now we have to leave. Oh, because your contract comes up again, and the TV contract, I think, goes to 2036. So Texas and Michigan and Kentucky's and whatever, Minnesota will be making more money for you or than you for what? 8 years, 9 years, 10 years at the most. Okay. I think they make more now, but I'm saying, like, this big gap that they're talking about. That you signed a contract. To me, it's like, okay, you'll find a way. You're a rich ass university. Shut up. You know what I mean? Charge tuition to $5,000 more. Who cares? Right?
It's the most frustrating thing with people like Nick Saban too, is like, it really speaks to like what kind of an animal you have to be in that spot, like kind of a shamelessness almost. But
Yeah.
like, for lack of a better term, or maybe that's the perfect word, but it's like, when they'll get up and have no shame and being like, boo hoo, look at all the ways that this isn't working out for me. And it's like, people forget for a moment, like, what the hell are you complaining about? You have gotten more breaks and advantages. And these Kansas, multiple Division I college basketball coaches were caught by the FBI on wiretap. Nothing happened to them. Sean Miller is on a wiretap saying, no, 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 no. Anything with the money, you talk to me. You talk to me, Sean Miller. That's S-E. It's like, dude, like, they will get up and actually try to make themselves like pitiful cases.
Yeah, like they're victims. Like that. Oh my God.
And like this money thing, it's so like, you have to, when you add money to a really strong institution and a strong program, it's dangerous. You cannot build a dangerous program just around money. It's like in pro sports. And I know, I don't know how up to date on NBA references that you are, but it's like, over the last decade, whenever like the Suns, it's like they have Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker together. They're going to be unstoppable. And it's like, how many times have we said that before an NBA season started? It doesn't work that way.
There's got to be a number. That's what I'm saying. Like, you saw the Kansas City Royals win the World Series not that long ago with a very low payroll. I understand that the Yankees and Red Sox can outbid for all their players, like the Oakland A's or whatever, but it's still, the game saves itself. Like, okay, I understand Alabama's backup defensive tackle more than the starting. Yeah, that's going to create some tough things. But you can't start him. You can't have him on the field. Now, depth does help. Football is probably the sport where it takes effect more than the other sports. But still, I still think the game saves itself. And you can't tell me if you're Kansas State. Like, let's say Kansas State, their TV deal is like $35 million, something like that, I think. And I'm sure they re-ups again in 2028 or something. So maybe let's say it's 40 million. And the SEC schools and the Big Ten schools are going to be getting 60 million a year. I still think with 40 million you could create a damn good roster. Like, I don't think it's as catastrophic as these people paint it out to be. Now, yes, we've never seen this before where it's that much money to those universities. But I don't buy into the fact that you can't fill the winner and your TV contracts, everything. The sport existed. We have a large window to see the sport existing without television at all, let alone they're going to have TV contracts. It's just not going to be as powerful as the other ones.
And this is why the concept of Moneyball and analytics has been so important, is because although analytics have taken on, like, they've grown and morphed into a different monster where people also can't apply common sense to some of those things with situations and circumstances. But the reason Moneyball is such an amazing concept is it allowed the Oakland A's to win just as many games, over 100, spending 20 million in a season where the New York Yankees spent 100 million. That ultimately, being able to put together a team for a specific style and coach to that style is worth about $80 million. You could argue that some of the best coaches are underpaid based on those numbers.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I don't know. I just love the thing. It's like, what are we supposed to do? I love how they're going to Congress. It's like, what? It's like, Clemson, you're going to, so let me get this straight, Clemson. You're going to have what? You're going to probably make, 20, 30 million less per year for 10 years. Okay. But then you get out of your TV contract. Why do we fucking care? You know what I mean? Like, you sign this thing, honor it. And I don't know, like, I don't feel sorry for you. This is my point. I don't feel sorry for you.
When Nick Saban is sitting next to Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz in Congress, and it's like, I'm sorry, I just didn't know. Like, that is just something you can just spoon feed to, like, a pretty big demographic of America who was going to be against anything, like, ever changing anyway. Like, I don't know how better to put that, but it's such a ridiculous, and here's like another, and I might have cut out here for a second, but one thing that you do wonder is, I'm gonna wait until, there we go. One thing that is awesome about the history of college sports is that there's scandals involved with these rules that there were. Like, you don't like to see lives ruined and stuff, but, like, I am fascinated by every point shaving scandal I ever saw. This is aside from the focus on, like, safety, because I usually, before this past college basketball season, I would have said, well, I don't want to, like, see anybody get hurt. And then I saw Kyle Filipowski a couple of times, and I was like, I don't legitimately, like, after 2 incidents, and I guess I'm on this now, so what the hell? After 2 incidents of floor rushing, where definitely nobody got injured, by the way, both people completely faked it. I think that's very clear from the video where and it's like, all right, if your ankle hurts, you tried to trip that kid. Like, it was at this point where they were like, but it's a safety issue. Don't you care about safety? And I'm like, you know what? No, I don't anymore. I don't think I care about safety. Not for Filipowski's ankle.
The safety shit is such an overkill to me. Don't get me started on the football shit too, but like the Filipowski one, it's like, if fans care, all right, let them storm, because if you take that away, guess what? That's 1 degree of them not caring to me. You know what I mean? Like, you're, and then to do it in the, like, where he completely flops and trips the guy, I just thought was ridiculous. I couldn't believe there's such a disconnect, in my opinion, between the media and the people that actually love college sports in general. And it's fascinating to see. That was a perfect example to see. Like, I just couldn't believe that no one gave the take of the masses. Really, everyone, like, I think everyone's like fearful for their fucking jobs or something, where it's like, well, this is just unacceptable in the sport. And it's like, this has been happening. You mentioned Bob Cousy earlier. I remember a video of these dribbling around the Boston Garden where they stormed the court.
With
No,
just his right hand.
yes, yeah. It's like, who the fuck are we kidding here? No one's ever gotten injured. Okay, yes, goalpost might have came down on someone's head in 1988. Okay, shit happens. All right, shit happens. If we got one person hurt out of like 150 years of court storming, I'll take those chances. You know what I mean?
Ankle, like
Yeah.
he didn't die.
Oh,
Like
no, he's not hurt. I'm talking about the goalpost to the head. I'm not even seeing the entire time.
and that's the thing, is like just more on how those stories were crazy. This
And then I missed that. I don't know what you said right there.
okay,
Oh.
like just in how crazy those stories got this year, where it was like, all right, Kyle Filipowski is 7 feet tall. Apparently, he played all game as a center in the ACC in the paint, getting rebounds, and he was fine. A 5'10" sociology major rushes him apparently at the end of the game, and this is what hurt him. I don't believe it but it was crazy. You couldn't avoid it when this story was on. There was
They weren't even trying to get. Yeah.
there was a point this year where I don't even know how our audio just got mixed up. Apologies again for the internet quality right now. I don't know what's going on, but the thing is, this story was unavoidable. It was the biggest story in America for like a 1 week stretch. And Mike Greenberg makes me the sickest, and I hate to say it because he was in the same fraternity as me and everything, but like he will get on and just say whatever you're supposed to say, and
I know.
it's the
It's
most.
like a robot. He's a fucking robot.
This is
Yeah.
unacceptable. It's a safety. They don't belong on the court. And it's like, okay, I know that if we wrote up a rule book, I'd probably say, like, all right, everybody should probably stay in their seats. But I don't actually care if people run onto the floor at the end of the game. Like, you're writing a rule book, sure. Like, you got to keep people off the court during the game. After the game, everybody seems to have a lot of fun running on there after a big win. But it was just a story where this was just like forced down our throats. And I think ESPN figured out at some point, like, I don't know if people cared as much as they even tried to make them care.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. And that's there's just such a gigantic disconnect there that I just think it's pathetic, really, that I don't believe they really think like that. I actually don't believe they really think like that. I think that they just think, I don't want to say anything controversial here. We're all new leadership. We're under Disney. I don't know, but I mean, either way, that topic, I just couldn't believe the people actually wanted to say that they should make it illegal. Jay Billis said we should arrest everybody. What?
And I love Jay Billers normally, and I know you do too. Like he's really someone you look to have the opposite take of that. Like usually, it came out kind of out of left field, but that was just so wild. The way, like, I think a lot of people too are just forgetting what like college was like, or they're trying to forget because that's the element that ESPN is kind of trying to take out of college sports. Is like, dude, like these what makes college sports amazing is that these kids are drunk and angry and yelling these are hostile environments. And like look at some of the riots that end up being some of the most fun times of people's lives, like after Kentucky wins a national championship and you like State Street burns to the ground in a good way. It's weird that like the way that they've gone about it, and I don't know if there's more money in it for them in a sad way or if this is going to end up backfiring, but it's like you cannot squeaky clean college sports and keep what it was awesome about it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's the thing. They got to know their product. They just don't know their product. That's what makes it. That's why we watch. That's why we love it. When I mentioned the old folks home, when Louisville's fighting Kentucky, like that is why it matters to us. You know what I mean? Like that. And I don't know. I just feel like there's a bigger disconnect than ever of what it stands for and why we watch.
And to tie this kind of up, I do think, because one of the things we talked about with Kentucky basketball was where I thought the Kentucky-Louisville rivalry was in basketball as compared to football. We saw a great installment of Kentucky football this past year. Louisville was like unbelievably horrific in basketball over the last year. Kenny, like, that wasn't even fun. It felt like we put an insider at Louisville to make them suck for a couple of years. Like, I have never. I told you that there was that day where they scheduled Kentucky Louisville basketball the same day as Kentucky football's bowl game. It was the rematch with Iowa. I have never cared less about a Kentucky win over Louisville and a Kentucky bowl game win in my life than the way that those two games played out. And now Mark Pope versus Pat Kelsey, I feel like really has the potential to bring the heat back to the rivalry.
Yes, I agree. I'm super, and I'll be honest, I'm looking forward to catching the Arkansas games too. So finally, there's some light at the end of the tunnel here. I feel like so it should be really fun, man. And I hate to do this to you, buddy, but I have another booking that I have to do in about 15 minutes here. But I am very grateful that you let me on the show, and I know we have so much stuff we want to talk about besides this. I would love to come back, man.
For sure. Hey, it was a blast having you back on. Folks, follow him on Twitter at the Colby D. He's got to get going. Thanks for listening to another Roto Baller. Tap that interlude episode. Have a great week. Peace.